Hello, everybody. It's the Historical Gamer once again, but you can call me Matt, and welcome to episode number 73 of the Single Malt Strategy Podcast. I'm joined with my trusty co-host, TortugaPower. You can call him Eric. How are you doing today, Eric?
I'm hanging in there. How are you doing?
I'm doing okay. You know, April's been a rough month for the family. But we are, well, by the time this posts, it'll be May. Joke's on me, it's actually June. But either way, so, new month and hopefully a better month. But we are joined by a guest, a first-time guest to this channel, a famous guest from Tortuga's Discord, Finnish Jager. How are you doing today, Finnish?
I'm doing good. Thanks for asking.
Well, welcome to the podcast. I wanted to have you on for a couple of times, and I think this is a great topic to be talking about with you, given some of your game interests and whatnot. Today we're going to be talking about management games, but before we get into the topic, why don't we start off with what you've all been playing lately? What have you been playing, Finnish?
Lately, I've been playing Team Fortress 2, a little bit with Wolfpack, and then some of his friends on his Discord. And then I've been giving Red Dead Redemption Online, or Red Dead Redemption 2 Online, a second chance. Wolf and I played it together, and we didn't really have too much fun, but I wanted to give it a different look, see if it's worth my time. But
you said a second chance. Did you end up playing through the single-player campaign, and did you end up liking that?
Yeah, I beat the single-player campaign. I didn't 100% all the side quests and everything. I think I got like maybe 70%, but I thought the single-player campaign was extremely well done. Like, it was a very polished game. I loved the story. I loved the characters. The setting was cool. I mean, I wish I could play it again without knowing everything. Like the second time, have your memory erased and play it a second time. So I highly recommend it.
Yeah. Did you play the first one?
I did not. And I went into 2 thinking I knew kind of what was happening. Like, I guess I heard stuff about Red Dead 1 secondhand. So I kind of was like thinking, I've seen this character before, and I think I know what's going to happen at the end of Red Dead 2, but I had learned, like, incorrect stuff. So, fortunately, like, the ending of Red Dead 2 was not spoiled for me.
Yeah, Red Dead 1, I have it on PlayStation, I think, 3? I don't have a PlayStation 3 anymore, but I think it runs on my PlayStation 4. I played through it, like, half of the way, and it was really, really good, but I never ended up finishing. It's just one of those games that, you know, you gotta put a fair amount of time behind to get through all the way. And I kind of did the same thing for Red Dead 2. I played through, like, I think about half of the single player, and it was really good. I just got pulled different ways by other games, other priorities, and I really need to get back to playing it.
Yeah, I think the single player campaign, I spent about 70-something hours to go through it, and I didn't complete everything. So there's definitely a lot of time and content there for you to play and explore.
Are you finding the online experience better than the first time you tried it?
A little bit. So the first time we played, we were kind of griefed at the beginning. People were running around and just shooting us and stuff, and we had set ourselves like to defensive mode so that would happen less, but people still found a way to like kill us. So I don't know, Wolf and I found like an area that we got away from that, and we're kind of just exploring and doing missions, but it felt kind of, I don't know, things kind of felt empty and kind of disappointing. So I went back to try it again, and it's kind of feeling the same thing. Like, I kind of just want to explore the world, create my own story, which I think that's what Red Dead 2 Online is like all about. But I guess I'm not really interested in interacting with other players.
Yeah, I mean, so I would say that that's a common problem with a lot of those types of games. There are some really cool communities out there if you find them, where you can really, if you want to dive into role playing without everyone being an absolute dick, you know, there are those communities out there. I don't think Red Dead has anywhere near the audience online anyway as Grand Theft Auto does, but there's some pretty cool role playing communities out there. If you were into like interacting with other people, I think it really fills the world out and makes it an interesting experience. But if you're just trying to experience the online world kind of with another friend, I do agree. I think it tends to be fairly empty without other folks to play with. But then, you know, if those other people you're just running into are randoms who are just interested in killing and being jerks, yeah, that can spoil it.
Yeah, that was kind of the big disappointment, at least first jumping in. Yeah, Wolf and I are kind of joking that we wanted to do a role play of, we were a Star Trek away team exploring the surface, but I don't think we'll ever get to that. That was just kind of a fun thing. Maybe we can do that on his stream or something.
That would be pretty cool. Anything else you've been playing that you want to talk about?
Nothing yet. There'll be stuff I'll want to talk about later on in the episode, but that's enough for now, I think.
Awesome. Well, what about you, Eric? What have you been up to?
I've been playing some old games. I've been playing StarCraft Brood War. I just went through the entire thing, both the original and the expansion, rebeat the whole campaign. I find that I kind of enjoy structured... I really enjoy sandbox experiences for the most part, but I guess maybe my life is changing and I'm starting to enjoy more scripted experiences because it's easier to do. I get home at night a little bit more worn out than I used to when I was younger, and I have less free time. And, if I can only advance something 45 minutes, it's a lot easier to advance a scripted event or a scripted game rather than going into a sandbox. So, I mean, that's one of the things I've been playing lately is games that are more scripted, like those strategy games that have a storyline.
Where it's not all on you to create it.
Yeah. I mean, ideally, if I had more time, I would love to create my own. There's a lot of these open world games or 4X games. At the same time, when I have less brain power to like think about what I'm doing, and I just want to relax. Let me segue to you.
I have been playing, I think, a game that kind of made me even more interested in talking about this subject. But it's a game called Kapital, Sparks of Revolution, which is kind of like a city management game, but it's a little bit different. So it's a new game that just came out, and you're the mayor of a town that exists in sort of like, I think it's kind of supposed to be like post World War I, but really the time frame is more like middle of the 19th century Industrial Revolution time frame. And so you're ruling this city, or you're the mayor of this city. And the premise of the game really is you have to build the town up. You have to address people's needs. But there's three distinct groups of people in the city. There's the workers, who are kind of like the proletariat, the laborers who work in the factories and make all of this stuff and don't make a lot of money. You've got the bourgeoisie, which are supposed to be like the businessmen and the owners of these facilities. And then you have the nobility, which I think is problematic in the way they model it. Because like, as you'd expect, they're the aristocracy, but then they're also like the civil servants, which kind of makes sense from like a leadership perspective. But I'm not sure that nobility would be working the ticket aisle at like the train station. So that's a little bit weird. And so the premise is basically you've got to deal with these three different groups, these three different factions in your city, and, address their needs. And if you don't, then they can lead, they can attack the palace where you live and work. They can throw Molotov cocktails, they'll get into riots and destroy stuff. And so it's very much intending to reflect sort of the Industrial Revolution time frame, when you've got this changing world of nobility sort of shifting off and businessmen sort of becoming the preeminent folks in society, and then all of the struggle and the conflict that exists as, people are going through the conditions that they're going through during the Industrial Revolution. So, the premise that I've seen so far seems to be you got to keep people fed and entertained, and then generally they're going to be relatively happy. But it's an interesting concept. I don't know if it hits all that well. I think it's a little bit shallow at times, and things change very quickly at times without much warning or potentially reason. Like, you've got lumber mills that just produce wood out of nothing, and all of your food has to be shipped in via train, via like grain shipments, which I guess could work. But yeah, it's I don't know how I feel about it yet, but I do think it's interesting, and it's the first, I guess I would say, management game I've played in a while, and really got me thinking on this, because I used to play a lot of management games, and management is a big topic as far as games are concerned. You've got city builders, you've got sports management games, you've got tycoon games where you're managing businesses. So it can be a very broad subject, but I know that the three of us have all played a lot of these types of games throughout our lives. And I guess I'm kind of curious what interests you guys about the topic. What kind of games have you played throughout the years, and sort of how do you approach these games, and what are you looking at getting out of them? And, we can see where the conversation goes from there. Tortuga, I don't know if there's any other games you want to talk about that you're playing before we jump in.
No, that's okay. I mean, I was playing some games like that are related to this topic, so I can just cover them in the breadth of that as well.
Okay. Well, I guess in that case, this is a very broad topic. Why don't we start from the beginning?
I was going to say, let's start with our entry into because I think that's an interesting story for me, at least. I think it's a fun story.
I would say before that, I have a question for THG. So I've been watching you play Kapital, Sparks of Revolution. And how similar is that to that revolutionary war game, or not war game, revolutionary French Revolution game, like We the People?
Yeah, so they're different eras. I would say We the People very firmly puts you in the French Revolution. So Sparks of Revolution is fictional. It's based loosely on something going on, I presume, in the 19th century. But We the Revolution is I would call that more of a role-playing game with management aspects, where you're a judge in the French Revolution. At the beginning, there's basically no management. You're just like, it's kind of like that trial game, that ace trial lawyer game or whatever, where you're presented with evidence and you have to make rulings. And
Yeah, ace attorney. Yep.
kind of manage your family, but like you're not the mayor of Paris, so you're not managing Paris. But as the game goes on, eventually it has some weird mechanics where it's like, well, now you got to fight street battles and you do have to manage that. And now you've got to manage like building some statue to the revolution. So there are management aspects in that game, but it's very much not a city builder or city management game. Whereas Kapital is much more, you're in complete control of this city and you've got to address the population's needs or they will rise up on you. We the Revolution doesn't have that. It's very story driven.
What about, is it Suzerain? Is that also in the same vein?
Suzerain, I would say, is much more similar to We the Revolution in that it's telling a narrative and you're the leader of a post-World War II sort of post-colonial country. So you do have it's not really a management game though. Like you have to make certain decisions about policy, but you're not building buildings. You're not watching people as they go through their day to day. It's very much more of a role-playing game, which I would distinguish role-playing games generally from what I'm thinking of when I think of management games. Role-playing games might have elements of management, but I'm not sure I would classify them as a management game if it's really a story about one person going through sort of pre-scripted events, and then you just have to make decisions on, which direction you're going to branch the story. But there's no like, you're not really managing the economy, you're not really managing finance, and so I think it's a little bit different in that regard.
Yeah, gotcha. I'm just looking at the games and I feel like there's some similarities, so I thought maybe they might be in the same realm.
I would say Suzerain and We the Revolution are very similar in a lot of ways, but I don't think that they're, outside of being potentially about a revolution, I don't think that they're very similar to Kapital. Kapital, I would say, is more of a true city builder, like kind of like a Tropico type game where it's like there are elements to there being a story, but it's really about managing the city and the people. I know, Tortuga, you said you had an interesting story you wanted to talk about your first management game. So why don't we take a step back and let's go back in the time machine and see, how did you guys run into your first management games? Tortuga, what was yours? What's the story behind that?
Yeah, mine is a childhood memory. I went over to a friend's house, let's say, and it was an older guy. He was actually a friend of my sister's friend's older brother, and he was just playing this game called Wall Street Kid. And I don't know if you remember this game from NES, but it's basically a stock trading game. I don't know if that's a management game, but you manage stocks. And it was his first exposure to like a Tycoon-like game where you're managing money. And it so inspired me that even though I didn't have any game like it, I made my own like game out of, I had a Super Nintendo and I was playing Super Mario World. And I ended up playing Super Mario World and counting the score, using that as like money I could spend on stocks. It was very weird. Anyway, so I was obviously from a very young age interested in Tycoon or management type games, like anything to do with money. The first game I played myself was probably Aerobiz Supersonic. Maybe at the same time Dungeon Keeper was maybe a little bit after that. So my first management experience came from console gaming, actually. which is just because I didn't play computer games that early on.
Now, you've been playing Aerobiz on your YouTube channel. Why don't you talk a little bit about that game and what appeals?
Oh my gosh, it might be my favorite management game of all time. At least it's probably up there for the one I've played the most. It's just a very basic airline company simulator. It's up to 4 players. I mean, it's always 4 players. You can be human or AI. And you take over an airline company in different eras. There's 4 different eras. You can start basically at the dawn of jet flight, or it's actually even when there's before jet flight. So around 1955, I think. And all the way into what was then the future was the last era is 2000 to 2020 or so. And this game was made in the early 90s. So it's I think that one's particularly funny to see what they predicted the future would be. And we're, of course, living beyond that period entirely now. But the game itself is it's just got a really fun cycle. Like every turn, which is every quarter, you manage your routes, you open up new routes, you invest in different business investments. The way the game is set up, it's just a whole bunch of different cities in different areas. There's like 7, I think, different regions. North America, South America. And every one of those has a mix of major and minor cities, with the only difference being that you can put a hub in a major city and you cannot in a minor city. And you're only allowed 1 hub per region. So the idea is that you're trying to grow from having no flights at all. Let's say you start off in New York. You open your first flight between New York and LA, and that's going to be a profitable one. But then you slowly grow and you get a lot of airlines in North America. You expand to different regions by you fly to one of the other regions, and then you build a hub in that new city and the new region, and then you expand there. So you spider outwards that way, and then you're competing against other people. So usually the first person who gets to a route connected has a big bonus, and overcoming them, ultimately to win the game, you're supposed to be like the number 1 in every region. So that's really hard to do, depending on the difficulty rating. Anyways, that's the game. I hope I didn't talk too much about it, but it's a lot of fun. I could easily recommend it to anybody, but sadly, Super Nintendos are kind of like ancient items at this point. I play mine through an SNES emulator, and I don't know, it's still enjoyable today. I don't know. You said you've seen this at least in passing, THG or Matt. Is it a game that you'd be interested in playing even now?
I would think so, but I also have a Super Nintendo, and I've been playing Super Battleship lately. So I never had a Super Nintendo growing up, but my neighbor had one, and we were basically like brothers, and so I spent a ton of time over there playing games. I was looking at your videos, and I actually was looking. I know you play it through an emulator, so I'm sure I could find it, but I was looking to see if I could get an actual cart to play it, and it was like $100 to try and find a copy of Aerobiz. It's not like one of those super prevalent games that you can still find pretty easily through like third party sources, but it kind of struck me. I think it was made by Koei, right? It kind of reminds me a little bit of there's elements, I would say, of Railroad Tycoon, but on a much more linear and limited basis, right? Because Railroad Tycoon, you can go to any city or whatever. There's a lot larger world, I would say, typically, in terms of routes and passengers or freight and things like that. But the concept's the same as Railroad Tycoon, where you're competing with other entrants into the marketplace, and you're starting often, at least if you start at the beginning of the game, where no one has an established dominance, and so you have that first mover advantage, like you would in Railroad Tycoon if you lock a city up yourself, where you're the one, the primary mover of resources. And some of those like business elements of the game remind me of that as well. So I would definitely be interested. It wasn't my first, but I played a different airline game a ton of, and this was a Tycoon game. I played Airport Tycoon, the first Airport Tycoon game, which was basically you're just running one airport, and you've got to build jetways, you've got to build runways, you've got to build the terminals and design the terminals, and put restaurants or food courts in one spot and security in another spot and baggage terminals. So like it's this whole almost like building management game. Well, then you also have to manage, building the exterior resources, the runways and everything, and the support elements, and then signing contracts with different airlines so that they'll fly out of your airport. And you had to choose between like a bunch of different cities of where your airport would be. And depending on what you chose, that influenced the type of routes or the type of, how lucrative it could be. And it was pretty interesting. And it's kind of the same where you could start. I don't know if it went all the way back to the 50s, but it was like the 60s. I think you could start anywhere between like the 60s and the 90s or the late 90s, I think, when the game came out. And the world was vastly different throughout any of those eras. So it was a pretty interesting game that I played a lot of. What about you, Finnish? What was your first management game?
Probably the first video game I ever remember seeing in my life, I guess, was my dad playing Railroad Tycoon 2.
Such a good game.
And then that's kind of what I started playing as well. So
what about Railroad Tycoon 2 did you like? Because I played a ton of that game and I rented it from Blockbuster like all the time and to play on PlayStation. It wasn't even on the PC, but I never played the original Railroad Tycoon. It was just Railroad Tycoon 2. But I'm curious, like, what about that game, spoke to you? What sort of drew you in?
Well, I never played Railroad Tycoon 1 either. But I think it was just because it was a game with trains. I mean, I'm just a kid, love trains. It's like, man, this game is completely up my alley. So I just love the building aspect. I've been looking at like screenshots and stuff like that, and I think like, even though it's probably a super old game, I don't know what year it came out or whatever, like it looks pretty good still. It's got like that isometric viewpoint, and I like the buildings and stuff like that graphically, but I guess it's been so long since I played this game that I don't remember much about it.
I can see where you're talking about the train element appealing to you, because I think one of the things that really stood out about that game to me was as you progress through time, different engines would open up, and so you would get more powerful engines, more modern engines, sometimes more or less reliable engines to choose from. And so one of the big things for me in that game was like you always had to figure out how to kind of min-max which engine you were going to invest heavily in, because some of them were really expensive and some of them wouldn't really be a big step up over the previous engine. So I remember there was like a 1848 engine. It was orange. That would always be like my mainstay, because if I hit that, I knew like the three previous engines didn't matter. But then like there was like a something bull, I think it was from like the
like the John Bull
30s, that would kind of be the one before that I would replace it with. And then as soon as you replace those engines, it, like if you did it through your whole company, it would just print cash because it was so much better than what came before. But there was this element of when do you want to make that changeover? When do you want to make that decision to upgrade your fleet? And I think there's a little bit of that in Aerobiz also, Tortuga, because I remember when you were playing that and you had to choose like which airplane you wanted to sort of be the main airplane in your fleet, and some of them are better than others, right? And so maybe one's cheaper, but you're not going to make as much money off of it. So I think that's one of those interesting aspects of all these games. There's this element of management of resources and making key decisions on when to upgrade things and when to just kind of let things fly. Usually it's a bad idea if just every time something new comes out, you buy it.
I think I love the component of transporting goods around as well, like creating your little train lines and setting them up so you're transporting steel and whatnot from city to city to the industries that need them.
I actually think Railroad Tycoon 2 looks better than Railroad Tycoon 3 or Railroads or whatever the game was that came after that. I love that 2D version of it. When they went with that like weird 3D version in the follow-on, it just looks, I don't know. The other one looks more like top-down Atlas type view, and I feel like you lose kind of the bigness of the world when they went 3D.
Those are both really good games, 2 and 3. I mean, for different reasons. 3 has the dynamic economy. I don't think 2's economy has, I don't think it varies over time. So once you find like a good route, you can kind of stick with that. But I believe that, I don't think it was in number 2, but in number 3 you had prices fluctuate, I think, based on how much supply and demand, which opened up a whole new, I mean, it's more complex, which could be a good thing or a bad thing, depending on how much thought you want to give the game.
Did 3 have that weird stock element of the game? Because like there was this, like they had this stock market management aspect of it also, where you could try to kill your competitors' companies by like short selling their stock, or take over control of your competitors by buying enough stock to become the majority shareholder, and have hostile acquisitions and stuff like that. It was like a game within a game that I always sucked at.
I thought that was actually in both of those, and maybe even in the original.
It was for sure in 3, and I know young self had no idea how it worked, so I just they're like, "You're not making money. We've suspended the dividend." I'm like, I don't know what that means. I don't care. So, and then I'm like, I want to be the 100% owner of my own company. So I kept buying and selling shares to make that possible. Because if someone owned part of my company, I thought that was bad. So, yeah, grown up me could manage that a lot better.
It could be though, because they would sometimes take it over and kick you out or whatever, and then you'd be left with whatever money you had based on your stock. You were a physical CEO in that game in a weird way, where you could get fired and still exist, and if you had enough money, you could buy or take over another company. It was really weird.
Yeah, if you got kicked out, you might have to start your own a second railroad if possible. So.
Yeah, I mean it had a very interesting mechanic that you had both personal money and company money, which is, not a lot. That's not a lot of games cover things in that way. But I think it's very nifty. You could actually be bought out, but that money goes to you, and then you could start another company. That's very interesting.
Yeah, and I'm gonna have to go play Railroad Tycoon tonight when we're done with this. I really want to play it again.
I loved Railroad Tycoon 3 because the cities were dynamic. I know THG, you mentioned that you could connect to a city and you watched it grow over time. And we did talk about the economy being with dynamic prices, but there was that map mode where you could see goods moving around the map, through rivers and stuff, and just over land without the railroads being involved. So then you could look oh, this is being transported to this factory, and then you could build a little line to make that more efficient. So I love that the transfer of goods in Railroad Tycoon 3 as well.
There's a couple of games that are pretty similar to that, but a little bit more modern. So there's Railway Empire, there's Transport Fever. So that there are some modern things. By the way, I know that this is not necessarily a popular opinion or even the correct one, but I do not consider Mashinki a management game simply because it doesn't use money.
What is Mashinki again?
Mashinki is basically a reboot of OpenTTD, but it doesn't use money. The resources you use are wood or coal. So you just transport these things to different places and you get coal or you get wood, and then you can use that to build more trains or lay more track. But I just find this idea of not having money as the main source of currency, it somehow rubs me the wrong way, which is not fair. The game is fine, but I don't like it.
And TTD is Transport Tycoon Deluxe.
That's right. Yeah, the Open TTD is. That's a huge. Finnish, you and I have played that one together, right?
Yeah, we have multiplayer. Trying to build the railroads whenever.
Yeah, that one's a lot of fun. Really good game. It has really complex railway management, so you have lots of signals and stuff that in order to get things just right, you can invent some pretty complex signaling structures. Something which you may or may not find in some of the modern railway or railroad type tycoons, like the Transport Fever probably has it, but Railway Empire it's fun, but it's a little bit more basic. It doesn't really have all that signaling aspect. This is just the management can get so deep with these railroad tycoon games because I guess they've been around for so long that we've become very comfortable with them. I don't think if the very first game had forced you to manage the signaling aspect of railroads, that it would have been very niche. But nowadays it's no, bring that in. I'm ready for it.
Well, now I'm not sure if I want to play 3 or 2.
You just got to play both, I think.
3 was always kind of interesting with the terrain because you're building and you could never level and raise terrain, so you were always trying to micro the best optimal route for your tracks with your gradient. That kind of made things a little bit annoying, I think, with the building.
That is true. It was difficult. I remember this one scenario where the whole challenge of it is you're supposed to be going through I think it's Colorado somewhere. Anyway, it's a very mountainous region. It took me maybe an hour and a half to lay a single track between 2 locations. When you lay your track, it actually does auto level that area and adjust the terrain around it. So you can't directly raise or lower, but just by placing track, the land will raise and lower. So yeah, I managed a way to basically cheat the system and lay some track along the coast all the way through. And I don't know, it was a disaster. But yeah, fun if you wanted to spend an hour and a half making the most min-max perfect railway line.
Well, you're a min-maxer. Is that why? And I don't mean that as a as a
Is that an insult or a compliment?
I'm not saying it's an insult, but I do feel like Tortuga, you are a bit of a min-maxer in how you approach some of your games. Is that what appeals to you about management games? Is that ability to sort of fine-tune things to the absolute, most efficient either route or process or system? Or what about these kind of games really, really appeals to you?
Probably a combination of two things. What you already mentioned, that it's a puzzle and that you min-max. Min-maxing is just solving the puzzle optimally, whereas people who are just playing the game to do good are just solving the puzzle good enough. I also like to see money number go up. So that's it. Pretty basic premise for me. If you can make money number go up in my game and do it in a way which is an interesting puzzle that I can solve, then I'm probably going to be interested in your game.
Okay. I know you mentioned there were a couple other games you wanted to talk about, or another.
There's just so many. I mean, the management category. It's like saying for our podcast we do typically strategy games. It's like saying, hey, let's just cover strategy games tonight. I think it's impossible to cover management games, and because to prepare for this podcast, I wrote down. I actually took I made a spreadsheet of all the different games, and these are just the category headlines. You have sports management games, railroad games, airplane-related games, commerce-related games, modern cities, other city regions. So I don't know. Software company management, space race ones, the other category, which includes things like Roller Coaster Tycoon, Theme Hospital. The Sims made it. I mean, you can do the management game where you're the evil player, which is not typical, which is the Dungeon Keeper, Evil Genius type thing. Those are interesting. So there's just so much in this category. We can dive into any one of those or talk about the topic in general. But I guess one thing I think we should cover is the modern cities area, like the Sim Cities, the City Skylines, because that's a very popular category, and it's basically the history of management games, I think, is founded by one, Sid Meier's Railroads, and two, SimCity. I think that those are the two original management games that really made things big for the PC.
Yeah, so I don't know. My first game, it might have been Railroad Tycoon 2, but if it wasn't, there were a couple of games that were all in that sim category. One was the original SimCity, which was pretty basic, but like if folks aren't familiar with it, basically you're building a city typically from the ground up. Obviously, the goal is to make money. You build different like residential areas, business areas, industrial areas, and sort of have to build your city up and manage all the infrastructure and everything that goes along with that, building roads and things like that. But there was I think a lesser known one that I actually played a lot of for whatever reason. Did any of you ever play Sim Town?
I never did. No, I thought you were going to say Sim Ant or Sim World, but no. Never. I have never even heard of SimTown.
Yeah, I'm looking this up too.
It's like basically SimCity, but in a much smaller sense. You're basically building a town. I would almost call it like Sim Suburb in the sense where like it feels much more residential focused. You build individual homes. You can actually like manage your individual residents of your town. The homes are pretty cookie cutter. Like they've got different styles and looks to them. But then the businesses and the infrastructure is just wild. Like the police department has handcuffs on top of the building so that you know it's a police department. Everything's much bigger than in SimCity. It feels very zoomed in because, again, you're only doing like a town as opposed to, a big metropolis. And so
I have a question.
Yeah.
I was saying that the two big originals were SimCity and Railroad. And I was going to say that Sid Meier's is for Railroad Tycoon, and Will Wright is the famous author of SimCity. Is this a Will Wright game?
It's made by Maxis, so they made SimCity, right? Electronic Arts, Maxis, Will Wright, Playfish are the developers of SimCity. So I know I think Maxis made at least SimCity 2000. I don't know who made, which I think is probably the most popular one, I think.
SimTown looks like it was Maxis programmers John Lewis.
Okay, so it probably wasn't designed then by Will Wright. Okay, interesting. So this is
But Will Wright was one of the founders of Maxis.
Yeah, that makes sense. I didn't know that, but I mean, the original SimCity was Maxis, so it's going to be the flagship product for them.
It looks like the timeline is SimCity 1989. Then the next one was SimCity 2000, which was 93. I feel like SimCity 2000 was probably the most popular one, but maybe it was just the one that I played the most of. Because like that was, I don't think they had like interstates or a lot of like SimCity 2000. I think also, wasn't that the one where they introduced like crazy random events that could happen where like aliens could come or like Godzilla could come or things like that?
Well, Godzilla was in the original SimCity. By the way, I don't know why I missed this. I probably played SimCity, the original, before I even played AeroBiz. So that this should have been in my like history. But I do remember watching my father play Sim Ant, of all things. I don't know if that's a management game or not. Or no, Sim World. I'm sorry, Sim World.
There was an ant game where you would like manage an ant colony. I played that, but don't remember it at like all.
Yeah, it's weird. This is the origin of all these management. But I mean, of course, management games probably existed in board games. Like, where did they come from? I actually don't know the legacy before PC games.
I don't know. I'd have to look into it. This is me not being prepared for a podcast.
I played, I think it was Sim 2000 on like whatever the handheld Nintendo device was at the time, Game Boy Advance or something, DS. Yeah, it was SimCity 2000.
Yeah, I had SimCity 2000, but my favorite of the SimCities is actually SimCity 3000, and I like it better because the advisors were better, and you had slightly better options. It was basically a more polished version of SimCity 2000. Yeah, and SimCity 2000 had the highways and stuff, which was really cool. But I just think that the original SimCity was such a breakthrough game. I'd have to like honor that as maybe the best from an innovation standpoint, just because it created the genre of modern city builders.
You know what's wild is that Maxis made SimCity, and I know that like it has the same name, but and I don't know if we would call this a management game or not. But then Maxis also were the inventors of The Sims.
Well, it's also Will Wright. I was going to say that I think that the game design, even for, if we want to talk about it, I think the management genre is governed by, or like was created by, basically Will Wright and Sid Meier. They both have such, I don't know what the word is, but like basically groundbreaking genre creating games, right? You have Railroad Tycoon, you have SimCity, and then ultimately The Sims. And by the way, The Sims is on my list of games because I think The Sims has been, it's a very interesting, and I think that it's one of my favorite management games. I've spent a lot of time in it, like many other people, because it's weird how far-reaching The Sims is. Because you can have people playing it for so many different reasons. Like I play it for the economy of it. Like getting I try to set up a really efficient household with like, you're going to work this job, you're going to work this job, and you're the person who stays home and cleans everything, because that way my two hardworking people can just work on getting promotions, getting money faster. So I treat the whole game as like an exercise in basically maximizing my money, my income. But you can play it as like a social thing, right? So a lot of people are just playing it because they want to have fun relationships in this video game, kind of like Second Life type stuff.
Yeah, I think The Sims was an interesting game that I played a ton of for a very brief period of time when a relative who lived nearby got it. This is like a weird scenario with a lot of my games where I didn't own them, but I played them at other people's houses, and then that became a big part of my gaming history. We ended up getting The Sims 2 because my sister absolutely fell in love with The Sims, and then I had like a million. If anyone wants to blame Paradox for having a lot of DLC, good God, look at The Sims, especially I think starting with The Sims 2. But yeah, she played those like crazy, which is interesting because the only other game I really ever remember her playing a ton of was Crash Bandicoot. So she was not like a big gamer or anything like that growing up, but she did play the hell out of The Sims. And I think for her, it was more the social element. I always got frustrated where it's like, you need a certain number of friends to get the next promotion. It's like, I don't want to make more people just so I can have more friends.
That's funny.
Because that was like a big part in the original game is you had to have friends to get promoted at different like jobs at different levels. And there were no AI friends. It was you built the whole neighborhood. And so you had to build and create more families in order for, you know, your flagship family or whatever to get promoted.
I did that. I mean, my game was so min-maxed to an absurd degree that I had a household called the Bachelorette family. I created, yeah, it's just like, oh, here's your mail order bride for the, at the right time when my person wants to get married, he'll go visit the bachelorette family, and I had like family of like 8 or something like that, because I didn't want to make more families, so I just made a family of 8 so that you could just make friends with all 8 of them. Invite the whole family over, and you have like 8 new friends. So it was very min-maxed, but that was so family oriented. I mean, my whole family liked it. That I remember drawing on graph paper with my sisters. They were not as interested in this part, but I got them interested enough that we were drawing graph paper what the new house we were going to design would look like for The Sims, because it's on a grid, right? So you can kind of design your own home.
What a wholesome family bonding moment.
Yeah, it's very interesting that this game has just such reach to people. You can really, because it's so many different things. It's a management game, but it also has this social simulation aspect. It can be a home builder for you if you want to like mock up a home design. I mean, it's got a lot of power.
Man, HGTV, they were just they missed out. They should have sponsored The Sims.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I don't want to talk too much about it because there's so much to cover. But I want to say that The Sims, I would call that one of the best management games of PC gaming history.
It's interesting because I think you could definitely break. I think there's 2 big categories in management games if you want. I know there's a bunch of subcategories, but like to me, it feels like there's a very clear delineation between city builders, and I would even put like The Sims in there as well, because it's kind of like a society or family builder, and then business sims, right? Because like Railroad Tycoon, very clearly a business sim. Most sports management games actually fundamentally still come down to business management. So like I've played a hell out of the park baseball, and that's a game where you're basically the GM, or I guess kind of the coach, but really the GM of a baseball franchise. And so you've got to make all the key decisions that come with that. Signing players, drafting players, managing games, things like that. But at the end of the day, you get evaluated by your manager on winning. But like there's this whole financial aspect to the game where you can only sign players based on the budget that your manager gives you or your owner gives you. If you spend a ton of money and go over budget, or if you're not delivering financial results because the team's not performing, you're going to get fired. Like it's by its very core, you're managing a business. The business output is winning, but like it is a business management game. You've got games like the Game Dev Tycoon series of games, which are all, they're about building games, but really they're business management games. And I really feel like there's a delineation between city builders and business management games, which are kind of like, that's how I would split it up between the categories.
Would anyone consider the Civilization series as a management game?
Oh,
I wouldn't.
Or is that too far for the like that 4X kind of deal?
Yeah, I would consider that in the 4X category, and only because I don't want to talk about it in this episode. But it is the defining 4X game, right? So I think we can say that, it's not a management game, it's a 4X game, and sweep it under the rug.
Well, if we do classify that as a management game, then really what we're saying is let's talk about strategy games, because at that point the door's open for, what you're really saying is fundamentally you like strategy games, because they're all like strategy games are largely about managing things, right?
Well, that's what I was saying when we were going to do this podcast. Like, if you say management game, if we're going to do a podcast on management games, we're basically doing like, let's do a podcast on strategy games, because there's so many ways of defining this, and even something like Sid Meier's Pirates, it's kind of a management game, right? You're kind of doing the trade, and it has that economy tycoon type thing, but it's probably first and foremost an RPG.
Well, Pirates is, but what about a game like Port Royal?
Well, that's on my list. I mean, we have
The man's got a list.
He's got a list and every game is on it.
No, not just the ones that I'm interested in. There's been so many. This is a problem. We're talking about a whole genre in one podcast.
Because I played a lot of Port Royal, and fundamentally, like, it takes a lot from Pirates, but instead of it being about sort of telling your story as a swashbuckler, it's about building a commercial empire for yourself in the Caribbean, which is like adjacent to Pirates, but is very clearly delineated out on its own sort of path, I would say. But I think the difference there is they decided we want this to be more about making money, where Pirates is you'd make money to get through your story. Whereas Port Royale, the end goal really was just to make money.
Is Rule the Waves 2 on your list, Tortuga?
No.
It's interesting you say that though, Finnish, because I would say like Arms Trade Tycoon Tanks, which is a game that I know Tortuga, you and I are both excited about. Like that is a management game, right? You're running a industrial firm that's building tanks, from the age of the start of tanks in theory, if the game, we'll see what it comes out of, but all the way to the present day. And, you're running an industrial firm. Now, Rule the Waves, you're a country, so I guess you're not really running a shipyard, but you are designing ships and managing your fleet based on a finite budget. I think it would be really interesting if you had like an arms trade tycoon shipyard or something. I've always wanted a game about shipyards. I know there actually is a pretty popular board game that's called like Shipyard or something like that. Never played it.
So I think I can clearly delineate at least where I would see a management game versus not a management game by using examples. I would, for example, consider such sports management games as Motorsport Manager, Football Manager, Eastside Hockey Manager. I would consider these management games. However, I would not consider Madden or FIFA management games, even though you can play them in almost the identical way. So I would say the Rule of Waves falls on the not management side because basically the target is more the action, more the fighting aspect of it. Even though you are, I guess the focus is still on taking your designs into combat. The same way in Madden, it's taking the players you've built up into the game. Whereas if you played a game like Eastside Hockey Management or Football Manager, it's not about playing the game. It's actually just pure management.
Yeah, you're watching the sim create or simulate whatever you've created.
Yeah, and you can it's funny because you can simulate the games in Madden and FIFA, but I feel like, again, in order to trim the number of games that we are trying to cover in a single podcast, I would say that those are not management games.
This reminds me, I think, of an episode on 3 Moves Ahead years ago when they covered The Sims, and I feel like there was a spot in that episode, maybe I'm making this up, where it was something like, everything is a strategy game, if you think about it.
Yeah, I remember that episode, and they did say that. And basically, I think that's what we can almost say about management, right? Almost everything is a management game.
Well, do we want to start talking about the sports management games? I know, THG, you started talking about out-of-the-park baseball.
I am interested in that. I believe you're more on the hockey side of things, right, Finnish?
That's right. Tortuga and I have played Eastside Hockey Manager. I don't know how much independently Tortuga's played it, but we've tried a multiplayer game once or twice. But I know personally, I was looking at my Steam hours for this game, and I have over 1,400 hours in Eastside Hockey Manager, so it's still going strong. Are
those real hours, or are those like I turned it on and forgot?
How many? Probably not too many, but there's probably a handful of hours of it being that way.
Are you a big sports management player, or is it this like the exception? And if so, what about Eastside Hockey Manager do you like?
So it's just like out of the park baseball. So it's just going to be a GM of a team, and you're managing your roster. You sign players, make trades, sign staff, so everything like that. I mean, when I was younger, I had the Xbox, and I would be playing like the EA NHL series. And I would never play like the online games and like the career, like create a player careers. I was always playing their GM mode. And I was like always so disappointed in how lackluster their GM mode was. And eventually like Eastside Hockey Manager came out, and it's like a nicely looking spreadsheet simulator. So you're basically doing all the things a GM can do. You're managing your salary cap, internal budgets from your board, things of that nature. It's just, I don't know. I love it so much.
Now, Eastside Hockey Manager is a little bit of an older game, right? Franchise Hockey Manager, which is made by the same company that makes Out of the Park Baseball, they've made a couple of hockey games that I think are newer. Do you play those?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so Eastside Hockey Manager, there was an original version, I think sometime in the early 2000s, which I never played. I didn't even know about it until I started playing the most recent version. And I think this most recent version of Eastside Hockey Manager came out in 2015, if I'm remembering correctly.
Oh, so not that
It's
old.
just by a single Finnish guy. The dev is one man. It's kind of like his passion project. I guess he rebooted the series. So I had played Franchise Hockey Manager. I think they're on Franchise Hockey Manager 8 now. They're releasing one every year or every other year. There's always like a debate, I guess, in the hockey manager sphere about which game is better. I think Franchise Hockey Manager will eventually surpass Eastside, mostly because it has much more hands-on development. But I remember when like Eastside or Franchise Hockey Manager 8 came out, they were talking about new features of the game, and I was looking at like the list, the changelog or whatever, and I was like, all these things are in Eastside Hockey Manager already. Like, why? It's like you're behind. So I think at some point Franchise Hockey Manager will be better. But until that day, I'll be playing Eastside. So
yeah, I think Eastside Hockey Manager is basically like, isn't it from one of the people on the Football Manager team?
Yeah, that's right. His name's like Risto Reams. Wrote his name down somewhere.
It has kind of like the polish, actually. Is oddly enough, it has, for a one-man team, it has the polish of like a Football Manager. And the only reason I checked right now, by the way, I only have like just over 100 hours in Eastside Hockey Manager. That would be way higher if Finnish and I were actually able to connect and withstand or maintain a multiplayer game, but we just we can't get the game to work multiplayer. It's just it's a real pain in the bum.
One thing we could do, which I know the Out of the Park games are very good at, we could always do a Franchise Hockey Manager online league.
Franchise Hockey Manager online?
Well, Franchise Hockey Manager might just work multiplayer in the same way we're trying to get Eastside Hockey Manager to work. The problem is that Eastside Hockey Manager doesn't have a very user-friendly system for connecting multiplayer. When it worked, I had a blast with it. I had a lot of fun playing with Finnish. And I have my own series, my own like single-player one, which has filled up probably, I'm just guessing that maybe 50 hours, half my time was on my own, and maybe half that time was with you, Finnish.
Yeah, we played multiplayer. I remember we did the fantasy draft, and then our teams were 1 and 2 in the league, so we knew what was going on. I think that was so much fun.
Yeah, we were supposed to face each other in the Stanley Cup, and actually we never even finished the first season, which is really unfortunate.
I think like if that game ever has a user-friendly multiplayer like system at all, I mean, it completely unlocks a whole new realm of like what's possible in the game. Just like unlocks so much more hours to spend with friends.
Well, I haven't played a lot of either of those games or even the Franchise Hockey Manager game, but I will say that like that's one of the core things that Out of the Park Baseball does that people love it, is it has an incredibly user-friendly way to have multiplayer leagues online. And basically it just turns into like a fantasy sports league, except that you're not limited to real life stats or limited to one season. There was one league, I don't really play in any leagues right now, but at one point I played a league where the league started in like 1970, and it was like a historical league where you'd have all the real players, but then they'd get drafted by the different teams based on, you know, who the humans actually drafted. And they had this incredible like HTML output, so it would basically like seamlessly allow you to export everything into pre-built websites, so you could just go to a website and view a lot of stuff and stats and interact with things outside of the game itself. And it was just a really well done system that has only gotten better, I think, with age and time.
Well, if Franchise Hockey Manager has the same system, then it's definitely worth a look at.
I assume it does. I mean, I could be wrong, but I would imagine it's the same, presumably the same code base under the hood. I know, and it's interesting you mentioned Football Manager, because that's like probably the most famous sports management game, but Out of the Park Baseball used to have some kind of partnership with them years and years ago. I don't know if they use the same engine or whatnot, but I know that like Out of the Park, it was like 7 or 8 was like somehow interfaced with Football Manager.
Another really good sports management subgenre, I guess, would be the Motorsport Manager and the upcoming, hopefully good F1 management game. I mean, I've been surprised, but I think everyone who's played Motorsport Management has really enjoyed it. And Finnish and I have also had some fun talking about that one. It's just, I don't know, it's a really good game. It just has all the management knobs just perfectly, about part management for your car and then driver management. So you have the personalities you're dealing with, and race management in the actual tactics of the game. It has everything that like a Football Manager or Eastside Hockey Manager has, but for motorsports. And for some reason, I'm not a huge motorsport fan. I do watch F1 sometimes, and I used to follow NASCAR when I was younger. That game has a special place in my heart as well.
Yeah, that's a game that I've written down too to talk about today, because you can have so many like options with your teams and your staff and your drivers. I think it has a lot of replayability there too. Motorsport Manager itself, I think, is a PC port of a mobile game that they kind of spruced up and made changes to so that you can buy a PC version. But I don't think it has any more development time into it. I think all the devs are working on like the mobile versions, so that's kind of a bummer. But yeah, I remember playing that, and like Tortuga, like Alekius and we'd be in Tortuga's voice channel, and we'd all be playing separate series at the same time and like commenting on what's going on. Like there were so many opportunities just to have like fun narratives with your drivers and the races.
Yeah, that's it. I mean, the storylines, the little drama it creates, it just can. I mean, I assume it's just by luck that you can end up with these situations where the game ends up providing you this situation where your driver is racing for first place in the last race, and it can happen in the last lap. And like I don't know if it's like winning the lottery that happened in my particular narrative, but it was just out of this world entertaining. It was so cool.
Yeah, I remember when you were playing that series, and it's like, man, we wish we could have seen that recorded and put on your YouTube channel, because it was just so fun to watch that drama. And I remember you talking about like the other drivers that would come along and like mess up your races or like get first place, and they were your unwritten rivals. So
that's right.
It has such good storytelling that like if the player has like a good kind of like creative storytelling to it, it really makes that game excel.
Yeah, I feel like that's a common theme in a lot of these management games, is the ability to have a wider story. And maybe that's what appeals to people, especially in the sports genres. Because like, I think if you look back at the roots of a lot of the non-management sport games, be it Madden, be it NHL, I think the core limitation a lot of the early versions of those games had was it was one season, right? Like Madden 97 or whatever. I remember I played that a ton growing up, but you could only play the 1997 season, or I think technically the 96 season in football. So there was no extended story. It was play through the season, win the Super Bowl or not, and it's over. And it wasn't until like the early 2000s that they started adding in like franchise modes, which would kind of be like a management mode, but that was never the core part of the game. It was always, I want to play a football game and I want to be on the field. Whereas like a lot of these management games, they started before the 2000, at least in Out of the Park Baseball's case. And the concept was basically like unlimited seasons, right? It's about charting your franchise through its history and becoming the greatest franchise ever, or GM ever, or whatever. And so core to their gameplay was, we want you to deal with all these things that management deals with. And so it comes at things from a very different approach. And I think that really enables some of that storytelling and some of those epic moments when you're not confined by one season. If you wanted to do that in any of the, the other sporting games, like before anyway, you kind of had to make it up yourself. And I think it's funny, Tortuga, you're talking about like how you'd build a house or whatever on like a grid of paper or whatever, and like playing that out like outside the game. I remember there was I think it was like Grand Prix something or other on Super or Sega Genesis that we were playing like with my cousin, and we built like this whole storyline of the race car driver like off the racetrack. And like, it was basically, I remember we were like playing house, like outside of the races, and would have these little, basically like soap opera type stories. And then once you completed all of that, like acting and just dumb stuff that kids do, then we would run the race, and like, those storylines someone would like announce it, and it would like play a part in the race, but it was kind of funny.
Yeah, you definitely can grow attached to your players or your drivers or whatever kind of sport management game, because I think for Eastside Hockey Manager, you're obviously drafting your players and everything, so you can grow attached to them. I find myself constantly checking their stats and seeing how they're doing, and like, oh, is this player going to be successful in the future? Or like, oh, this guy, he's a point per game player in his minor league team. want them to succeed, even though they're just, code in a computer. So you feel attached to these guys, and then when they make the NHL, you're kind of rooting for them to be productive, and they'll have a career with your team.
Yeah, it's something that not all the management games we're talking about here have that personal element. You don't really have it in any of the city builders. I know they tried to bring it in by allowing you to click on a single individual sim in SimCity 4. But yeah, it was always so distant. But yeah, those sports management games, you do really have this connection. It's lacking in a lot of the other games, but it's very effective. It's a good storytelling mechanism, and I don't know, it probably empowers the whole sports management genre.
Yeah, with Motorsport Manager, you have those kind of traits for your drivers and kind of random events that kind of make them feel a little bit more human to some degree. They have relationships, positive and negative, with your staff and other drivers. So that kind of makes it pretty real. But hopefully we can see some similar stuff for F1 Manager.
Yeah, I think the sports genre, the sports games, they are taking advantage of it. They know they are capitalizing basically on the fact that people are really interested in what's happening with these people, because they've created all these interview type scenarios and managing the actual players. I actually think they've gone too far sometimes with Football Manager in particular, managing the egos of people. Because you can make a game realistic where you actually make it no longer fun. And I think that sometimes, to a small degree, Motorsport Manager had this, where you had to manage personalities. You basically just who was going to be the first driver, who's second driver, who has priority. But I think that was all still okay and fun. But managing the prima donnas in Football Manager, I never liked that aspect of it.
I also think with Motorsport Manager, they had those post-race questions that were honestly pretty terrible. They could ask you questions about things that were completely unrelated. Yeah, you finish 1-2 in the race, and it's your question is, what do you think about this driver who finished 18th? And you're like, do you want to sign them for next season? You're like, why don't you talk to me about the race?
I think that happened in this story where I had this driver come from behind and win the career, and the question was we noticed when you were stopping, or, I don't know, it was something completely unrelated to the amazing drama which had just unfolded.
Yeah. And those question answers, you would have to min-max too, because it would make your chairman happy or unhappy, make your drivers happy or unhappy. So that was kind of a bummer with those questions.
I don't think they really do it anymore, but I remember when they first had the My Career mode in NBA 2K, they would always have a post-game interview, and it was always fun to just be an absolute douche. Just yeah, I am the greatest player, or yeah, this other guy is absolute shit. Because it was always in this interview format. It was pretty funny to kind of watch and see the reporters reaction to you just being a jerk. I think part of that for sports games is so much of sports today, they, at least in the way it's covered from a media perspective, they always try to build a narrative. They always try to build up the personalities. Now, I don't know that was as much the case, at least in the way that it's reported in the past. Yeah, there were always superstars, but especially in the NBA, for example, and you see that more and more in additional sports as well. There's always a narrative that they're trying to craft. And I think that's just because people want stories. They want to feel a connection with the players. They want to, have this bigger arc that Cinderella type story that they want to believe is happening. And so I think it sells well, but I think that's why you see it becoming a bigger and bigger part of these management games, is because the way that sports are reported on today is very narrative focused. And so how do you have a game that people are looking for, that experience of management and that experience of a league, when everything we know today is based on narrative and the way that those are reported today?
I don't know if it's different. I'm not sure if I agree, but I'll have to think about it more.
I think it's more accessible because of social media. Maybe, I don't know if it's different, but it's certainly more in your face.
Okay, that's believable. If you guys don't have anything else in the sports genre, or if you do, let's talk about it first. But otherwise, I'd like to jump to a different topic.
I think the only thing I'll mention here is we briefly talked about F1 Manager 2022. That should be released this summer, so that's definitely something I think Tortuga and I are looking forward to.
It is.
That's being published by Frontier, or developed by Frontier, so hopefully we have a good product, and it's officially licensed by Formula One. So hopefully we have some good funding behind it or whatever that comes with.
Is that one going to have multiplayer? Because that title is obviously big enough that it should have multiplayer and should support it in a way which is a lot easier than, well, we don't want to smear Eastside Hockey Manager too much, but...
The Steam page says single player
Oof.
under the tags, so I don't...
Okay.
I guess that's not surprising, but there hasn't been like any gameplay footage for F1 Manager yet, and I think there's pretty limited in-game screenshots. So we'll see what comes up. I think information's kind of limited, so hopefully that doesn't mean like they're not going to release in the summer if they're not releasing footage. But we'll see what happens. We'll play it by ear, really.
I noticed a trend, Tortuga, last time that we had Wolfpack on. You guys kept talking about all these games you played together that I was never invited to. It sounds like it's not just a Wolfpack thing. You and Finnish just exclude me too.
Well, maybe it's not just an us thing. Maybe it's a you thing.
I don't know. Seems really up in my face.
I think it's pretty funny. Because I think like Tortuga and I have a lot of the same interests, but some of our like game interests do not overlap. So whenever we find something that we both like, we try to make an effort to play it together.
Yeah, I would say it this way. I'll just speak for myself here. I won't put words in your mouth, but I really enjoy hanging out with you, Finnish. And so when there's a game that it overlaps, it's like, oh, okay, this is a medium by which I can interact with this guy who I enjoy spending time with.
I enjoy the time we spent together too, so the feeling's mutual.
Okay. You don't enjoy my company, but anyway, moving on. What was the other topic you wanted to talk about?
Yeah, I wanted to dive into like an extension of the modern city builder, which those are my words, right? I don't know what the genre is called for like SimCity, City Skylines, all these, but I call them the modern city builder because there's also like the city region manager type genre, which would have, or subgenre, which would have like Caesar in it, Pharaoh, also Tropico and Anno. I mean, is Anno considered 4X or management? I don't know. But Tropico is probably considered a management game, right?
Tropico is definitely, I would call it a city builder.
Yeah, so I mean,
I played a ton of Tropico growing up, by the way. Love that game.
Yeah, it's a great game. And I mean, which one of them, people debate which one is the best, right? It's kind of the same thing as all these other games with Civilization and all that, where there's so many titles that people have chosen their favorites. Like my personal one, I think it's Tropico 5. Maybe it's Tropico 4. I don't even remember.
5 was, I think 4 to me is kind of the pinnacle of like the island and management. And then 5, they realized like, well, there's only so much you can do about being set in this fixed period of time. So they introduced this like era idea where you would progress from like basically a colonial island in like the 1700s. Then it would like jump forward in time. There's like a 1950s era, and it had like multiple different eras, which was something that was different.
Oh yeah, I'm mistaken then. It was Tropico 4, which was my favorite. But that's really cool. The fact you're managing now an island, and in that one, they, where the gloves were off, they were able to deal with like growing narcotics and stuff like that. Because it was kind of like the Fidel Castro simulator in its infancy. Like the original Tropico and Tropico 2, I think, was supposed to be, and they continued with this tongue-in-cheek Fidel Castro type build your own Cuba situation.
Yeah, and I think it was interesting. I think one of the things that really stands out about Tropico is like, yes, it's a city builder. It's a city builder in a smaller scale than like SimCity. You're not building with like millions of inhabitants on your island. It's a couple hundred, maybe 1,000 or so. And then the ability to like drop down and see each individual person on your island, and sort of, you could build a little bit of a connection. You could build a little bit of a story with your people, but then you could also be a dictator and decide, I'm going to imprison this person. I'm going to, execute this person. And then you have to manage like elections and things like that. So it was kind of like a political manager game that mixed in with a city builder. And to your point, it's kind of like the Fidel Castro game, simulator. You're managing your own island and you have to stay in power. The original game starts in the 50s. They even had like a Pirate Cove version, which was like back in the 1700s, and you'd have to send like pirate ships out to like raid shipping and like bring you money and resources from off your island.
That's right. I forgot about that, but
I've got a disc of it in my closet, and it was actually, I thought it was fun, but I think it's usually sort of the redheaded stepchild of the series. It doesn't get talked about a lot.
I'll jump off that subgenre to another one, which we probably should talk about this one at least a little bit. There was Roller Coaster Tycoon, which spawned the, I don't know, like X, like everything insert any word here, tycoon game genre, right? After Roller Coaster Tycoon, there was like anything, Prison, Tycoon, there was everything which came from that. So Roller Coaster Tycoon and all of the anything you can think of tycoon game genre, I think that's like a really interesting management game. Roller Coaster Tycoon itself probably is it's got to be the top 5 of best management games of all time, right? The series, at least.
I don't know if it's top 5, but it's up there, yeah.
I would say so, yeah. Yeah, Roller Coaster Tycoon 2 I think there's an open Roller Coaster Tycoon 2, just like Open TTD, that people can play and download. So that game is still going strong, I think, with a dedicated community behind it.
And even if you were just to look at only the theme park management subgenre that Roller Coaster Tycoon obviously spawned, there's like a lot of games in there. I was recently playing, what's this most recent one called? Planet Coaster?
Planet Coaster. Yeah, that's a Frontier game, surprisingly. So maybe they're getting some ideas for management from that.
I will push back on it being the creator of the genre, because there's a game called Theme Park which came out in '94, which was 5 years before Roller Coaster Tycoon, which is basically Roller Coaster Tycoon. But
oh my gosh, you just reminded me. Is the Theme Park one, is that for Mac?
I don't know. I played it on the PlayStation because this is back in the day when you could play strategy games on PlayStation. It was made by Bullfrog and EA.
So yeah, I remember playing it, my friend. Yeah, I'm pretty sure this is the same one. I think this is the game I used to play at a friend's house. I didn't have it. I didn't have an Apple computer, but he had an Apple, and this is the same guy who introduced me to Escape Velocity.
But I would say the key difference with the theme, because it wasn't, I think they had like Theme Hospital, and they had like a whole series of games that were built off it. But the thing about Theme Park is it was much more tongue-in-cheek than I would say like Roller Coaster Tycoon, which was much more just straight business simulator, but you have to create your own theme park, right? Whereas Theme Park was really very tongue-in-cheek, a lot of sort of humor built into the game, not taking itself too seriously. Whereas, like I said, Roller Coaster Tycoon, I think would fit more in line with just your traditional biz sim games. That
I thought the Roller Coaster Tycoon did not take itself that seriously. I think they had a lot of fun with it too.
I mean, they had fun with it. I guess I'm just saying, like, there wasn't comedy built into like all the characters and whatnot in the way that.
Yeah, I mean, the thoughts that people have would be,
yeah,
you know, the famous meme of I want to get off.
Yeah, like I want to get off of like Maze 1 or something.
Oh, maybe I'm wrong then. I don't know. Maybe I didn't play enough Roller Coaster Tycoon.
Yeah, I want to get off Mr. Bones' Scary Ride or whatever.
All right, well, maybe I just didn't play enough of it. By the way, yes, Theme Park was on Mac OS.
Okay, that's funny. So you're right. The original who started this all, we should acknowledge, was, what's the game called? It's Theme Park OS? Theme Park. And that was a very good game. I think that was a great game. And Roller Coaster Tycoon is, I think, simply a reboot of that, just a recreation of that. So let's honor the appropriate originator of it. It was a brilliant game, and I mean, you can see how popular Roller Coaster Tycoon is, and all the other roller coaster theme park type games. But then that kind of like tycoon, like comedy based tycoon genre, like that's where I'm thinking like Prison Guard Tycoon and all these other things where you had these like thought bubbles with people. I don't know, there was like I remember I got PC Gamer magazine until probably around 2002 or so. In the late 90s and the early 2000s, there was just a rash of these tycoon type games, very similar to Roller Coaster Tycoon in the look and the style. They were all just trying to cash in on what was obviously a very successful game.
Huh. Roller Coaster Tycoon was published by Hasbro under the Microprose brand.
When did it come out?
1999.
Okay. It's later than I thought, really. Well, I sunk a ton of time into that. And not only that, but that's another one of those games which seem to have a little bit more reach than just your typical min-max or small. It has a little bit of that The Sims thing where my sisters actually were enjoying it. And I remember actually my father played a lot of it. So
yeah, things like Zoo Tycoon, Roller Coaster Tycoon. It really gave the player the option to be creative with however they wanted to design stuff. So that was definitely why I played both of those games too. Love building your own coasters, making them really popular, making something really crazy and wild and dangerous and seeing if people wanted to ride it.
Yeah, that's right. So did the original theme park have creating your own roller coasters?
Theme park, the original? Yeah, you built your own. But it was nowhere like the fidelity of it was the coasters were much more simple.
Yeah, I think I remember actually building like a winding race car track or something like that.
And it was much easier to kill your people through your incompetence than I think in Roller Coaster Tycoon.
Well, I mean, that's whether that's a good thing or a bad thing. That's dependent on the viewer, right? Sometimes it was fun to build a one-time coaster that wasn't complete, just was a big ramp, a launching point.
It's interesting, though, because I feel like the spiritual successor to that theme series of games is 2 Point Hospital, made by 2 Point Studios, which was kind of like a hospital, like because there was a theme hospital also. But this one's like a much more lighthearted, like building a hospital and managing it as well. And I think they're doing a school one now too, where you like build your own campus or college or whatever. And whatnot.
I played 2 Point Hospital only for a free weekend, but I just, I have so many games and not enough time to play them at this point. I almost bought it though, because it's one of those games that when for the free weekend, I probably put like 5 hours into it, which is very impressive. That's probably the full extent of my free time for a weekend was spent just playing this game. So I really enjoyed it. The thing is, we're getting to the point where it's really hard to do something that innovative. And I found that 2 Point Hospital was still basically just, it's doing kind of the same thing that all these other Tycoon games have been doing. So although it's nice, the interface is nice, everything's very well polished. If you want to play a Tycoon game, I would definitely recommend this to you. It also isn't that innovative.
Its gimmick was kind of like being goofy,
Well, that's where I feel like the theme series, my recollection of the theme series is they were very goofy.
Yeah, mine too.
Finnish, did you ever get into like the game dev games? Because I feel like that spawned a ton of management games. Like there was Game Dev Tycoon, but then like I feel like the original, there were like these game biz sims, which I know Tortuga's talked about or played. But then like even that, there was this like mobile game called like Carrysoft's like Game Dev Story, and there were all these different versions of that. Like, did you get into any of those kind of games?
Nope. And I think this is the first time hearing about these games myself. So, no, I think growing up, I mean, I played Roller Coaster Tycoon, Railroad Tycoon, Silent Hunter 3, everything in the Civilization series. I guess recently, maybe not recently, but in the past 10 years or whatever it is now, I played a lot of City Skylines. I don't remember when City Skylines came out, so that game's not 10 years old, but it was pretty fun, I think. I eventually got burnt out by that game.
I've never played City Skyline. That's like the current version of like the main city builder.
Yeah, I would say so. It's probably like the premier city builder at the moment, unless there's other ones that have been released and I don't know about, but...
Does it do anything like different or interesting, or like what's its thing?
I don't know if I could tell you. I don't know if it's really that different other than being modern, but I'm sure someone will disagree with that statement. I think what I want to see out of a city builder is like a pre-built city or like a small town that you build off of, or one that lets me do like mass transit designing. So like designing a subway or designing like a trolley system or something. I want something that combines the city builder with like Railroad Tycoon. So I'm just waiting for something like that to exist.
Yeah, because I played another game I played a lot of back in the day was Sim Tower. I don't know if you're familiar with Sim Tower or not, but basically the concept was you're building a skyscraper. And you're running it as a business. So you've got to build up to like, I think the goal is to get to like 100 stories. So, the quick and easy way to usually do it is go with office buildings or condos. Like those are what you start off with. Condos make you a ton of money when you first build it because someone's got to buy it, but then they don't make you all that much money after that. And they cost money to upkeep. Whereas office buildings generate a ton of money, but they can be more volatile, I think, based on like the economy and other things like that. But then you've got to like branch out. You've got to build restaurants. If you've got office buildings, presumably the people at your work on lunchtime, they want somewhere to go and eat. They'd prefer not to have to leave the building. So you've got to do that. You get like express elevators or regular elevators. You can put like a movie theater in your building. You have to manage garbage collection and taking care of that and all of the upkeep there. Fires can happen, bomb threats can happen. But it was another one of those like early Tycoon games. I would say, it's not called Tycoon, but that's very interesting. And I think there was a pretty popular kind of clone of that came out recently and then got, I think, in trouble because it was too similar to it. But
well, in a similar vein, I played a game called Project High Rise, and that came out in 2016. I'm looking at the Steam page now. And it's basically kind of what you described. You're building a tower, residential or shops, restaurants, things like that. And your goal was to make money. It's definitely a management game.
Yeah, I'm looking at Project High Rise right now, and even like the screenshots look pretty damn similar to...
So maybe this is the one that got in trouble.
Maybe they are. I don't know. But you can still get it. It's still on Steam, so...
Then they didn't get in trouble enough.
I think the one I was thinking of was a mobile version. But yeah, this looks very similar to Sim Tower. And, like condos wouldn't like to be next to office buildings because the noise or whatever, they'd complain or other things like that. And
yeah, yep.
Tenants and leases come up due and they may or may not get renewed. And I might have to buy this. This looks interesting.
Yeah, I think it's pretty good. I don't know if it was super detailed. I don't remember putting a whole lot of time into it, but I did have fun with what was available in that game.
I know there's a call center game that I saw that I never played because I worked in a call center and I didn't want to do anything about it.
Yeah, you want to relive PTSD or something like that?
No. But yeah, I think it goes to Tortuga's point earlier. It's just there's so many. Everyone wants to throw the word tycoon into something, or at least there was that period where everything was a tycoon game. But they're all these different ideas of like every aspect of life, every type of business. We're going to go ahead and we're going to make a game about that and just throw Tycoon at the end of it to try and sell.
Yeah. I'm going to create Laundromat Tycoon. You think that'd be popular? Yeah. Oh.
Laundromat Tycoon? There might already be a laundromat game. Let's see. Laundry.
Oh, no.
There's a laundry simulator.
I do that every weekend. I mean...
a point-and-click time management game where cats rule. Manage your hectic laundromat and get your cat through law school to defeat the laundro cop.
What the
heck? Okay, good old Bessie the washer. Oh my god. Okay. Yeah, that's an interesting game. It's got like these little clips in the trailer where it's like the screen goes black and then text appears and it's like fold, dry, wash. Like I'm not obviously listening to the music, but I'm guessing it's very epic.
Oh my god, it's like, why would I play a game about laundry when I do it every week?
I mean, everything is a janky game in one. We could even do a whole episode about jank sims because that seems to be like the thing nowadays, in the way that like Tycoon was before, and now everything is simulator.
Yeah.
And they're all like sharing the same assets, probably out of Unity, and they're all trash. They're not all trash, but a lot of them are trash.
I think about like that series that's like Tank Repair Simulator, Aircraft Repair Simulator, or like Home Demo Simulator, those kinds of games.
Yeah, I've heard good things about Tank Repair Simulator, or like Tank Mechanic Simulator or something like that. But generally, I would agree with you. Like, there's so many Gas Station Simulator or Manager or whatever. They're, in a lot of ways, it's the new Tycoon. You just throw a simulator at the end of it, and you.
Yeah. What's like the OG though? Is it Flight Sim? Is it the Trucker Sim or what? Train? Isn't there Train Simulator? Those are like the OG simulator games.
There is a trucker, like there's an American truck simulator, a European truck simulator. There's a farmer simulator. I don't know what the OG jank one is though, because like the truck sims are actually, I think they're pretty high fidelity.
I did play Train Simulator growing up too, driving around, trying not to crash or trying to drive the Flying Scotsman to 100 miles an hour.
But I'm not sure what the original like janky one is. Maybe like My Summer Car, which was like this really weird.
Oh yeah, that one.
Have you played that?
I've only seen videos about it.
I think you're in like Sweden. Is that?
Yeah, I thought you were like Finland or Sweden in that one. Yeah.
There's apparently a new version of it, or like not the same developer, but they made like one that's basically the equivalent of it, but it's in Canada.
I'm gonna click on their Steam page. Let's see if it gives a hint. It's still an early access game. Oh, it's Finland. Yep.
I heard they're making a My Winter car.
Finland in the 1990s.
Yeah, this should be right up your alley, man. This should be right up your alley. 38,000 reviews. How? Anyway, we've taken a left turn.
Hey, that's a good pun for my summer car.
God. Oh, I didn't even think of that.
Well, overall, I don't think I have too much more to talk about in the management genre. I think we touched on it.
Yeah, I don't think I do. I mean, I guess the only other thing, which is kind of adjacent, but I would say is different, is like political simulator games.
So maybe probably like Democracy or something.
That's a good... I didn't even have that on my list. Democracy, that's a great one.
Is that a management game, though?
I don't know. Where do you... So, again, I think management game... I seriously think this is the fundamental problem of trying to do a podcast on management games, is that I think that's as broad of a topic as strategy games, because you can... I think that geopolitical simulators are a subset of management games. And yes, I would say it's a management game.
Because I was thinking there's a company called Kremlin Games, and they made a remake of Crisis in the Kremlin like 5 years ago, which was like... Crisis in the Kremlin was the original one. I think it was like a 90s game. But basically it was about like managing... It's 1991. And it's basically about like managing the decline of the USSR, which is wild that the USSR didn't actually completely fall apart until, 92? And this game was released in 91. But basically you're Gorbachev, and you have to like deal with all these different crises from the 80s to the early 90s, and with the slow dissolution of the Soviet Union while you're trying to, maintain your power. And I always found that game super interesting. I don't think you could go to war. It was really just an internal political management game and managing crises. So I guess it's political, but it's also like very much management, but in a little bit more of an abstract way, in that you're not like trying to make money per se. You're just trying to hold this federation or this empire together. So now we're going to wrap this episode up with Finnish. You're going to give us your 30-second definition of what a management game is and why they're awesome.
If I can make money, it's a management game. How about that?
I already said my two criteria are: I want to see a money number that can go up, and I want to have an interesting puzzle to solve. But I guess that shows how broad the field is. Because even the games like Civilization, you have money which goes up, right? They have some kind of currency, and you do buy out buildings or whatever.
My narrow definition might also be like being a higher up level individual in a company, and then you're managing that company.
Do you guys ever play Capitalism? Any of those Capitalism series games? I think it's like the peak. It's like the rule the waves of management games. It's like the off the deep end spreadsheet management simulator. Is essentially, I would say that we haven't really talked about this genre. The subgenre is the industry tycoon type genre, where you have the industry giant or rise of industry. And
I would think that Railroad Tycoon or those kind of games would fall into that category, wouldn't you?
Well, I don't know. It's
maybe similar, but I don't think I would say they're the same.
Yeah. So it's about, like, the industry giant is more about choosing to create the product that you want to sell. And there's I would say you could break it down into, you would maybe lump all of these in logistics simulators. But, well, no, not even that, because industry, it really is about you choose, and capitalism as well, you choose a product that you want to start investing in and creating. And logistics is like a sub-problem you're solving. But the main one is, what product do I want to get? I want to buy low, I want to create low and then sell high. Whereas the Railroad Tycoon ones is more about, I want to be the person who moves the product from A to B.
But it's still about buy low, sell high, in the sense of, I mean, you're still running a business, right? You're not, I don't care what I'm transporting. I'm just meeting the demand, and I need to make money, and I need to manage my costs, and I need to maximize my profits.
Well, I mean, okay, yes. If you want to say that both of them are about making profit, yeah, okay, I can't argue that. But I still think there's a pretty big distinction between the two. Like, one of them is about, you're the person generating you have a choice about growing apples or cutting down wood Or not even being the person who's cutting down wood, being the person who requires wood as an input and takes it out and makes lumber. And you can just choose based on how you think you're going to do, like which element, which part of the market you want to enter. Do you want to be a raw goods producer? Do you want to be a person who turns that into something else? And the transport type games, including like even OpenTTD, even though it does have this aspect where you can actually buy some companies, I think that those are more about, I would say the focus is on transportation. It's really about making sure to solve the logistics problem. And although logistics is an element in the supply chain, I think that the business, like the industry giant type games, are more about the product.
I would agree with Tortuga there.
It's just a distinction. I mean, you can, if you want to blur the lines enough, we can merge the two. If we blur the lines enough, soon all management games fall into the same category. Or if you want to be really, really particular, you could say, no, Industry Giant's not even the same as Rise of Industry. They're in two completely different genres, because there's probably a reason you can think. I can't think of a reason, but you could probably find a way to distinguish the two.
Yeah, I'm not saying you're wrong. I'm just, I guess the more we talk, the more I regret this coming up with this topic, because I think it's not prescriptive enough. As you said, it's very broad. Anyway, I'm not sure I have anything else to talk about on this episode. Finish, anything you wanted to?
Nothing really. Thanks for having me. That's pretty much it.
Is there anything that you want to, anything you want to promote at all? Do you have a YouTube channel you want to talk about? Do you want to promote a Discord, a website, a product?
I don't want to do any of those things. Don't visit my YouTube channel. It's garbage. I never stream on Twitch, so don't go there. I don't have a website. I used to make YouTube thumbnails, but no one's purchasing those anymore, so I'm going broke. You know, things are getting desperate over here, buying $1 ramen.
To be fair, you cut me off. I was buying your thumbnails, and you're like, I'm done with this.
Yeah. Well, you know one place you could find me? You can find me on Wolfpack 345 Live's YouTube streams.
Oh, no.
I'm an occasional guest there. Wolf is happy to have me. Sometimes I provide some comedic relief when things need to happen. So check that out for sure.
Well, thank you again, Finnish, for coming out. This will be an interesting podcast to edit. Tortuga, do you have anything you want to leave us with, or why don't you take us out?
No, let's just come to the conclusion that we'll have to revisit this in more detail later. But if people are interested in hearing more about this topic, just let us know. Otherwise, we'll move back to strategy wargaming or whatever. So thanks, everyone. And until the next one, we're out.